So tonight we're going to talk about the daily intentions that Jesus gave as part of this devotion. And it's interesting that in this devotion, Jesus asks us to order our days around a very specific set of priorities. And that's very much in keeping with the unity prayer, which seems to be such a great description of what this whole devotion is about. And sometimes it takes us a while to get it, right? At least for me, this thick skull, it takes a while. I keep having to peel the onion. When I think I'm finally there's another onion, and I'm still peeling. And I'll give you an example of this degree of devotion, this degree of complete submission of our will to God. That is the key to the great outpouring of grace. In fact, I was reading in the 33 days to morning glory, summarizing the consecration of St. Maximilian Kolbe and how he described sainthood with a formula, right? He had a formula of capital W and small w, capital W plus small w equals S. That when the will of God is joined to our will, it results in sainthood. And that sense of surrendering our will entirely is the key to grace, right? Grace is not following Jesus. Grace is not imitating him. Grace is not obeying his teachings. Grace is his life in us. So if his life is in us, whose will is going to be in our bodies and in our souls? It means giving up our wills entirely to his. So think of that first line of the unity prayer, right? May our feet journey together. I don't know about you, but how might we normally take that initially, right? We want Jesus to come and be with us. We want Jesus to come and walk with us. We want Jesus to come and walk with us all day long. We want him to walk with us at the store and walk with us at work and walk with us around the house. And we want Jesus to come, and where we are, we want Jesus to come and walk with us. All right, whole song, right? Lord, walk with me. But that's not what Jesus asked, as he clarified it through the devotion, right? He didn't say, okay, I'm going to come and walk with you. He says, you take up your cross and follow me. Right? So it's not a matter of we ask Jesus to come and walk with us. We say to Jesus, I'm going to come walk with you. I'm going to go where you're going, not ask you to come with me where I'm going. It's interesting, it's just how I look at my own life and I see, okay, it's much better for me to say, Jesus, come and walk with me, than Jesus, get out of my life, as so many say. But again, we can go so much further by then going from Jesus, come walk with me, to Jesus, please redirect my steps so that I now walk with you. And so here we have Jesus asking to order our lives now, not according to our priorities, but according to his priorities, this submission of our wills. So he says to Elizabeth very early on in the diary, my daughter, I'm now going to specify how each day of the week should be allocated. The decision is yours, right? Will. So important. The decision is yours. I respect your free will completely. You flatter me if you abandon it spontaneously to me. Your will to mine. You come, walk with me. Right? That's throughout. It's not, take up your cross and walk with me, but we come back to this rich young man, right? If you be perfect, what you will do? Sell all your goods and come, follow me. So, what are these daily intentions? So we have Monday. Monday is the day of the holy souls. So Jesus asked Elizabeth, let all your actions be done with the purpose of helping them, these souls in purgatory. In union with me, desire these souls contemplate my face as early as possible. Offer for them the strict fast as well as prayers during a part of the night. Right? That's bread and water until 6 o'clock. Remember, the whole Monday fast was for souls in purgatory. He says, I do not ask this strict fast and prayer just from you, Elizabeth. Make public these requests jointly with other messages from my heart. So this is for all of us. Anyone fasting on bread and water on Monday will free each time the soul of a priest from the place of suffering. And whoever practices this will receive the grace of being liberated from the place of suffering within 8 days after their death. So a promise to us as well as a promise to those that we are aiding. And he says, our mother herself is asking for this. Interesting. All right, so there's Monday. Now we have Tuesday. And Tuesday, he says, to offer this day for the family. He says, make spiritual communions for each member of the family. Offer each person, one by one, to our dear mother. She will take them under her protection. You will also offer that evening vigil for them. We'll talk about vigils much later on. But you'll offer the evening vigil for them. My daughter, you must be responsible for your family, leading them to me, each in his own particular way. Now that's kind of interesting, right? I'm sure that's why many of us are so engaged in this devotion. What caught our attention initially, we care so much for our families. And we see the great destruction going on in families, and we want to do something about it. And here is Mary's plan to do something about it. And so it's interesting, this Tuesday is this day for the family, commending each one to her by name on Tuesday. But also notice his statement that we have to be responsible for leading our family to Jesus, each in their own particular way. And that's where sometimes we can become a little impatient and say, Jesus, will you come along with me? I'm going this way. And Jesus says, no, I'm going this way. Are you following me? This is the way to get to your heart of your child. Not the way you think, but the way that I know is best. And each one is going to be different. I often wonder, I'm sure many of us have wondered this. This is not unique to me. I'm pretty sure this is one that just about every Christian who's a parent, or even others that aren't, have thought the same thing. What gives? Why me? Not in the sense of why me, why are you picking on me? Why me? Why are you blessing me so much? Why do I understand? Why have I responded? Take from me and give to my kids, to my family. Let them understand. And when we ask and we wonder why. And to me, that is a big question. And I sometimes wonder if, in a sense, salvation isn't such a fragile thing that God knows exactly the right time to open one's heart to it. If you think of it, what's worse than not knowing Jesus? There is something worse. What's worse than not knowing Jesus? Hating. Well, that's true. Hating him would be even worse. But something even worse than that. Denying him. Something even worse than that.
Dying and going to hell.
Okay. What's worse than not knowing Jesus? Knowing Jesus and then turning away from him. All right? Knowing Jesus and then willingly turning away from him is the absolute worst thing we could possibly do. And so I wonder, I don't know, this is just John spewing. I often wonder, is the reason why it's not now, as much as we want it to be now, is because God knows that time isn't right. It would be an awful thing for someone to be forced into something, not fully embrace it, and turn their back on it, and be worse than if they had never come at all until some later time. Does God know that the time for this one is the moment of death? The time for this one is a major sickness that's going to hit them when they're in their 70s. The time for this one is when they get married. The time for this one is when they have their first child. The time for this one is when they have a great sorrow in their life. God knows. God knows. And again, as we hear so often, if we're asking, and we're sincerely asking, as we'll learn about the vigils, we do have free will. And yet I think to myself, anyone who truly sees things as they are, who truly sees God and sees us and sees the difference between heaven and hell, Would anyone not deceived by Satan and in their right mind ever choose hell over heaven? So at some point, God is going to bring that point of clarity to all those that we love. You know, if He can do that to those where we'll talk about vigils, where there's this incredible promise, perhaps the greatest promise of all of the Flame of Love devotion, that while we keep vigil, the dying will not be damned. They will come to salvation no matter how deep and how hardened their sins. If God can do that for people we don't even know, will He certainly not do it for those we pray day and night, but at His time, because He knows when the time is right. Let us walk with Jesus, not ask Him, not drag Him by the collar and say, Jesus, I want it now, and I want it this way, and I want it for that one. When He says, no, you are responsible. Don't stop praying. Don't stop doing. Don't stop trying. Don't stop beseeching. Don't stop finding the right way. And sometimes the way is saying nothing, lest we drive them further away. And sometimes the way is confronting them, and sometimes the way is beseeching them, and sometimes the way is just shining before them. Pray, ask for wisdom, follow the lead of the Holy Spirit rather than our own will to want what we want. You know? Pray. And part of prayer is listen. Listen to where the Holy Spirit is leading you about these we love. What to do, what not to do. I will digress on this a little bit. I wasn't planning to. This is a relatively short presentation. I want to keep it short. Sometimes I hear about how it is mercy to confront people with the truth. And there is a certain truth to that, right? It's not mercy to let people drive over the cliff and not tell them there's a cliff over there, you better stop driving. And they'll cite the watchman in Ezekiel, right? The watchman in Ezekiel. Son of man, I set you up as a watchman. You know, you're supposed to tell the house of Israel their sins, and if you don't, you're responsible for their death. You know, if you do, what else are you going to do if they still go on to their death? And I hear that, and it's true. It's Scripture. But the way I see some people go about doing this is more destructive than helpful. Often I sometimes see people using truth like a cudgel to bludgeon people. And it drives them further away. It's interesting. The law came through Moses, but what came through Jesus? Two things. Grace and truth. Right? The law came through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. You need them both. Truth without grace can be counterproductive. We need truth and grace. So I liken it like this. You know, so you're the watchman, and you see this person walking very quickly towards this grave danger in their life, their spiritual life. And so you turn to them, and because you know through so many years and years and years, the universal language was French, right? The lingua franca. And so you start talking to them in French, and they don't understand you, because nowadays everyone speaks English instead of French. And so they don't understand you, so what do? You start yelling at them rather than talking to them. You yell at them even louder in French, and now they're looking at you really funny. And they still don't get you, so you start jumping up and down and yelling and screaming and gesticulating wildly and yelling and shouting at them in French. And now they're trying to avoid you, and they're running even faster towards the danger to get away from you. Now, when we stand in judgment before God, are we going to say, God, I was the watchman. It's not my fault they went over the cliff. And I don't think God is going to say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I think He's going to say, you stupid idiot. You could tell they didn't understand French. Why didn't you learn English? If you were really interested in saving them, instead of just executing responsibility as the watchman, you would have found a way to connect to them so that instead of driving them away, you draw them to you and save them. Why did you do that? We were just executing a responsibility. I don't want to go to hell, so I'm going to be the watchman. I'm going to beat them over the head with truth, whether they like it or not. Or are we going to find a way to marry the truth and grace to reach people as they need to be reached, at the time they need to be reached? So never stop. Never stop praying. Never stop trying. Never stop listening to the lead of the Holy Spirit and the action of grace to how we reach those we love and those we hate. We're supposed to save them too, right? And not hate them, but love them. So, my daughter, you must be responsible for your family, leading them to me, each in his own particular way. Ask for my graces on their behalf unceasingly. We will work together, and I cannot do without your support. Right? So we will work together. Okay? That again, that's not grabbing Jesus by the collar and saying, work this way. It's us saying, Jesus, I follow and I trust you. So that's Tuesday, one of my favorite days of the week. What was that great line from Winnie the Pooh? What day is it today? Because Pooh asks Piglet, and Piglet says, it's today. And he says, oh, it's my favorite day, or something like that. Wednesday. Wednesday, a day for priestly vocations. All right, so on Wednesday, ask me for many young men with a fervent heart. You will get as many as requested, because the desire lies in the soul of many young men. But there is no one helping them to realize their goal, especially in today's environment. Right? You wonder how many have thought about becoming a priest, but how many families support them? Everyone thinks every priest is even evil molester. Just terrible things that, priests endure now, good priests endure now, unfortunately. So you look at our seminarians and think of the flack they're getting and how discouraging it can be. All right, so the desire lies in the soul of many young men, but there is no one helping them to realize their goal. Do not be overwhelmed. Through the prayers of the night vigil, you can obtain abundant graces for them. All right, so Wednesday, a day for priestly vocation. Right, so Monday, souls in purgatory. Tuesdays for the family. Wednesday, a day for priestly vocations. Thursday, reparation to the Blessed Sacrament. On that day, you will spend hours in my sacred presence. What? Hours? It's kind of like we asked last week, right? What is these hours of reparation? Well, hours of reparation. Not minutes, hours. How much time do we want to spend with our beloved? Again, I'll digress just a little bit. Again, I say this is the flame of love, not the flame of responsibility. That hopefully, as we pray, there is a desire and an engagement in prayer. Sometimes I hear this. I have many times I've looked at participating in a third order, Carmelites, Franciscans. And always God has just for some reason made it very clear, nope, that's not where you belong right now. But sometimes I'll sit in one of the community meetings, and they're talking to new people and explaining about being a third order Carmelite or Franciscan or a secular Carmelite. And they'll come to the breviary. And of course, one of the intimidating things is that you pray the breviary, you pray the liturgy of the hours, at least the morning and the evening prayer, and preferably complete, the night prayer. And I always hear it. It's only 15 minutes if you pray quickly in the morning, and it's only 15 minutes at night. And I think, wait a second. What do you mean? You're treating it like it's something I've got to do to get out of the way, like a trial I've got to go through. Praying the breviary is just one of the most beautiful parts of the day. In fact, when we talk about night vigils, that's what I often use. I try to use the office of readings, for example, often, except in November when I'm usually praying a rosary because of the souls and the prayers and releasing them. But I often do the office of readings, and that could be an hour or 2 hours. Just going through the office of readings. Morning prayer can easily be an hour. Evening prayer can easily be an hour. Not that it has to be, but because it's not something I have to do. It's the beauty. It's the love song. I look at the divine office, and it's like being on your beloved's balcony and singing to her. It's your love song to God. How much time do we want to spend with the one we love? And so it is with prayer, like when we pray the rosary. There's no need. It's not as if we have to get through it. It's a dialogue. I used to joke with a very dear friend of mine. We would have a faith-sharing group on Thursday nights, and afterwards she and I would often go into the church and around the tabernacle, and we'd pray the rosary. We might be there for an hour, and we open up and we'd talk about how it's like the family just sitting around the kitchen table. You know, there's God the Father, and there's Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and there's Mary, and there's St. Joseph, and hey, there's my guardian angel over there, and oh, Gabriel, what was it like when you came to Mary and were talking to her? What was it like, angels, when you sang and the sky opened for the first time, and the shepherds saw all this? You know, to be engaged in prayer. You know, Mary, what were you thinking when Gabriel came? You know, Elizabeth, how do you know Mary came? How powerfully the Spirit worked with you? How did you yield to that? Give me some tips. You know, this being with our family, being with the ones that we love, being fully engaged in the prayer, as opposed to just saying it. And then hours become nothing. Then it becomes the opposite problem. I got work to do. I've been up for 3 hours at night. I got to get some sleep. You know, let that be the approach to prayer. And then when it says, on that day you will spend hours in my sacred presence, you just say, yeah, I really want to do that. And that does happen. It just happens because you're with the one you love. It's my time to lie in the arms of my beloved and just be there. You know, you're newly married and you're on your honeymoon, and you lie in bed with this person you just love and now you committed your life to, and how long can you stay there? You know, you kind of joke about how you don't have to worry about breakfast and coming out. You're there all day. Not even doing anything. You just love being together. That's what prayer is. You know, you're a little child and you put your head on your daddy's shoulder. How long can you stay there? You know, you're a mom and you have your child, you know, on your chest lying in bed. How long can you want that child to be there? Oh, about 25 years. But they need to go at some point. They may not want to be there for 25 years. Mom, I want to move out. I want to be on my own. I want to make some decisions of my own. You know. But when we're with the people we really love and we allow ourselves to fall in love with God, spending hours with Him is what we want to do, not what we have to do. So on that day you will spend hours in my sacred presence. Adore me with great fervor, making reparation for the many offenses inflicted upon me. Offer the strict fast for the 12 priestly souls, right? These 12 priests who are to take the message out. This, I kind of personally reinterpret that as, let me pray for the leadership of the Flame of Love movement. Offer the nocturnal vigil for them. Immerse yourself into my sorrowful agony as I was sweating blood. You will draw great spiritual strength from it. Now, I find the phrasing very interesting. Reparation to the Blessed Sacrament, specifically. Think about it. In fact, I'll get the mic out so that we can hear in the echo around here. But I asked myself several times, why does he phrase it that way? In what ways do you think we have to make reparation for offenses against the Blessed Sacrament, specifically? What comes to mind? How would we sin against the Blessed Sacrament? Any takers?
I think the most wonderful thing is learning that that's the real presence of Jesus it's not bread and wine. It's the body and blood. Mm-hmm. And to get through to other people, even other Catholics don't believe in the real presence. Mm-hmm. So that when I do my holy hour on Thursday, and I pray for the souls mostly, but that's the biggest problem, is that people don't really believe that that's the real presence. And Michael and I have both experienced where the host has dissolved in our mouths like flesh. So, you know, when we need it, you know, we're having trouble, all of a sudden it like explode in our mouths, become gigantic. And then other times it'll be just, you know, regular host, you know. I guess if you don't experience something like that, your mind is not ready to accept it.
Yeah, yeah. So indeed, that is one way. We have people who come and take it as a piece of bread, take it without believing it is His real presence. Or maybe they do, but just don't think about it. Right? Just go through the motion. In fact, there'll be a place where Jesus will talk about not approaching His table as just haphazardly, not out of habit. Other ways you can think in which we make reparation, we sin against Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. Now, there are those who do so very explicitly. Right? One of the reasons why, like when you do the funerals, we want to be very careful about people walking off with the host, is there's a market for them. $600. Satanists, indeed, want to defile the Blessed Sacrament. So we have those who might teach against it, teaching that it is only a symbol, that it isn't real.
Those who are not Catholic, who are not Catholic, just receive it.
Yeah, just those receiving without believing it. Yeah, please.
For me, I believe you shouldn't be holding the Eucharist. I think it should be only taken like it used to by the mouth. I think it's you respect it more because your hands are dirty. This is what I think. Your hands are dirty. It's too holy for you to even have it on your hands. I think you should receive it in your mouth with the
paten.
Absolutely. And I prefer, to be honest with you, kneeling. I think that's the way you worship Jesus. Respect and honor. And I think everyone's hands. You don't know where anybody's hands were, and then you're going to receive it. And then some of them don't even. By the time they walk to the end of the pew, then they put it in their mouth. You don't do that. That's disrespectful. I mean, I think it's such a great honor. It's such high up there. You shouldn't even be touching it. We're all sinners,
We are. But what I would say, and again, when I receive, that's how I receive. I do tend to receive in the mouth. But let's trust the latitude that the Church gives, because people will approach them in different ways. They may have the exact same attitude, but manifest it in a different way. For example, for a long time, I did receive it in the hands. To me, it was the most remarkable thing that I could take this host in my hand, take it out of my hand, in my mouth, and my hand had become the holiest place on earth. I'd walk by and just rub my hand, thinking of what has just been here. Bless it with holy water on the way back as I passed by a font. An act of great adoration still in my hand. I decided not to, personally, just because, again, I didn't want to take a chance on what crumb might be there, what might miss, what might fall off. In some ways, I'm concerned because when we do have communion in the hand, we open the possibility of people walking off with it. On the other hand, if you don't know where your hands have been, you don't know where your tongues have been either. And so when you have the priests constantly, one after the other, touching tongues and touching mouths, So I would give latitude to how the Church gives us the latitude for different expressions of the same sentiment. But I tend to approach it the same way.
I think when I received communion, I was kneeling down and crumbs fall on the floor because you have, this. It's like,
Yeah.
And every Eucharistic minister is a little different.
The
Yeah.
church has done all this here.
You have to really say, I'm really sorry. No,
Yeah.
it's true. You have to, I don't know.
Yeah.
We were brought up differently. We
But-
were taught that. Now the church has given this latitude where, well, okay, you could do it this way and you could do it that way.
I just think that Jesus is, his body is so sacred, and I do agree with you, hold it in your hand, but I don't think a lot of people appreciate it as you may.
Right.
Yes.
I don't.
Yep.
And that's why they give too much of that. I think that for me, when you give it in the mouth, and I know you're talking about this, but I think children respect it differently. Because now they take it and they're walking around by the time they go.
Yeah.
That's terrible, yes.
So the thing we need to teach is the reverence.
Right.
How it manifests can be quite flexible. And this is an important point in the Church, because we are all different, and we need to be differently the same. What I mean by that is the principle, the reverence, the love has to be there. How it comes out, look at liturgy. You look at just our different cultures sometimes. For some people, reverence is almost silence in Mass and get very offended when people sing or if they sing out. For other people, reverence is dance. Go to our brethren in Africa, and they worship God with their full bodies, dancing in liturgical dance. One right or one wrong? Actually, both can be wrong and both can be right. You look at how we adorn our churches, right? You can adorn a church in Franciscan poverty and have almost nothing there and be sinning entirely because it's become an obsession to you. Or you can adorn a church in great gold and it be a sin because it's become a point of vanity. Or you can adorn it in great gold as an act of great worship and love. So there's great flexibility in this, but we have to teach the same reverence and the same devotion. And then it comes out in this great individuality that can be expressed in many, many different ways. And it builds our ability to trust what the Master is doing, teaching each one of his children. So each one is different, and each culture is different. The other day, I was chatting with Father Rick after the Mass here last night, and he was saying it's just such a wonderful thing as he was at the communion line, and seeing just about every nation on earth gathered here, every race, every possible representation of people. And he says, why can't the world get this? We're in peace, we're dwelling together. Different approaches. You have people here who I know in a Mass would be waving back and forth, and other people who would be just sitting quite, That's okay. That's okay. Even as the church changes liturgically, it's okay. I remember, for a while, priests were coming out from behind out of the sanctuary to give the sign of peace. And you look at that and you say, well, this is the great sense of community. And then the church liturgically said, no, you shouldn't be doing that. And that's okay. It's not taking anything away. It's just a different emphasis of the reverence of doing it. You look at the Masses, right? We have the Ora Novo and we have the Tridentine Mass. There's not one that's right or wrong. One emphasizes the table and the communion of God, and the other emphasizes the reverence and the awe of God. And there's something to be learned from each one. There really is. So it's sometimes more challenging when we have that diversity because we're comfortable when people are all the same as we are, because we're right. But by allowing that diversity, it allows us to focus on the things that are important. How many times have I cringed because I have seen people driven away from the church by people who are doing liturgical actions perfectly and with as cold a heart as possible? They know how to do it. They're going through the motions. There's no reverence. There's no love. There's enforcement. As opposed to being able to teach the foundation of love and respect and worship and having that come out in ways that are creative. Not creative in the sense of destroying our tradition of liturgy, but ways of expressing the same liturgy. If you were to go to a Mass in the very first century, I'd imagine, although the format is almost the same, if you read Justin Martyr's description of the Mass from 155 AD, it's almost exactly what we do today. But I bet if you went and watched how they celebrated and did the same thing, it would be quite different. So I encourage you to look at the diversity, the variety that we have, and use it as a tool to grow. And be careful about defining it a little too closely at times. Okay? But personally, I do what you do.
It's so funny that my daughter, she's in the city now, so she goes to Latin Mass.
Can you?
So they tend to be very.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually approached one of the parishioners, and she said, you really don't make me feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
coming here because it's a group, and if you're not part of that group, you don't feel like it. And they apologized to her because she was very honest.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I'm trying to understand it,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been to a Latin Mass too. And but you don't make it that easy because they just stick in a clique.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, because if you do that, that's why people head out the door. They don't want to be here because you
Yeah.
just make it so like.
Remember last week or 2 weeks or whatever it was, we spoke about spiritual engineering. That's really important. If you're a spiritual technician, you're going to get stuck someday because something's going to hit you that's different that you didn't expect and you may be offended by when there's really nothing wrong with it. It's just different. Whereas if you're a spiritual engineer and you understand what is the underpinning, what is the motive, what is the principle behind this, then you can manifest yourself differently. So you will land and when you're traveling, you land in a Mass in Angola, you're not offended, you rather rejoice. So it's something that we can embrace with wisdom, because there are times where it's abused. Okay?
Well, I know when...
Yeah, let's set you again so we can hear. Otherwise, it'll never come across when the...
But I noticed from doing the funeral masses that people that grab the host are the most troublesome, because they're the ones that usually walk off with it, wrap it in a tissue.
But that reflects an ignorance. See, this is an area where we need to educate.
Father Rick, I explained to him, now he will not let someone take it like
Yeah, because we don't take the host, we receive.
open their mouth. He won't even let them do that.
Yeah.
He'll just say,
Open your mouth.
so the priest needs to know that too.
Yeah. Yeah, and the missals.
But I know I receive on the tongue, but if I am sick or something,
Yeah.
I'll receive on the hand so the priest doesn't have to touch.
Yeah, so there's a good example of expressing love and expressing worship differently depending on the circumstance.
Right.
And again, there is a need for education, and this is where the church needs to do its job of educating. How many people know that we don't take communion? Other denominations take communion. We receive communion because it flows to us through the priest. We receive it. That's why we don't self-tincture. Right? We don't take the host, dip it in the wine, and then take it with the blood and take it. I've seen people do that. Now, in other rites, you do, but it's not done that way. And actually in the Latin rite you can. In the Latin rite there can be intinction, but it's not self-intinction. You don't do it because you never take it to yourself. The priest can dip it and give it to you, but it has to come from the priest, and there has to be a patent in case anything dips. Now here, for example, comes back to these ideas of different worship styles. That we have I always get it backwards, the Ordo Novo that we typically celebrate, right? Which can also be celebrated ad orientem. So you can celebrate the new style of Mass with everyone facing the altar, including the priest. That's an acceptable form of worship. And the emphasis seems to be on, again, this fellowship. There's a Tridentine Mass, which very much revolves around the priest, right? Why does the priest elevate the host? Because it used to be done behind a screen. People didn't even see it. And they would elevate the host so people could see, because it was all about the priest, not about the people. Right? You would ring the bells because no one understood what was going on, so you rang the bell to know at the moment of consecration. So the Tridentine Mass really emphasizes the priesthood and that awe and reverence. Now, if you go over to St. Vincent at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, you'll see the Syra Malankara rite. And there you'll find something very different. Catholic rite, beautiful Catholic rite, using an ancient liturgy from St. John Chrysostom and going all the way back to St. James of Jerusalem. And there you'll see the men sitting on one side, the women sitting on the other side. They stand almost the entire Mass. They chant almost the entire Mass. It goes on for an hour and a half or 2 hours. When they receive for communion, it is intinction. The priest will take the host, dip it under a paten, and give it to each person. The sign of peace is given differently. Still a Catholic Mass, just a very different rite. And that rite, to me, is almost the best of all worlds. It's celebrated ad orientem, so you have this wonderful sense of this awe and reverence. At the same time, the whole community participates in the Mass all the way through, so you have that sense of community. It's a beautiful Mass. All of these are different ways of doing the same beautiful thing. So the Church has the duty to teach the principles and to teach the specifics where appropriate. We don't go and invent on our own. But within those guidelines, there can be great variety, giving us the ability to express as we are moved at the time.
It's the same Mass, though, right?
It is a Mass. It's the Catholic Mass. It's just it's not the Latin Rite Mass. Well, I should say it's not the Roman Catholic Mass. It's the Syra Malankara Catholic Mass. Just like you might have a Melkite or a Maronite, a Syrian Catholic Mass, a Greek Catholic Mass. You have an Ambrosian Catholic Mass. If you go to Milan, I don't know if they still celebrate it, but St. Ambrose had his own liturgy for the Mass, which is a little different than the Roman Catholic liturgy. So there's this variety that all, when done well, are just all different ways to worship and glorify the same God.
Be very open-minded about all this and accept it. And as you say, be taught what you're saying. That's really what it amounts to, because you go someplace and say, oh no, that's not our Mass. you're on the cerebellum cara. You know, you get disillusioned. You say, well, that's not really our ways. But
It is.
saying it is, it's just a different sect. But you really need to be very open-minded.
Open-minded and informed, because there are wrong ways to do it, right? As all the things we talked about, there are wrong ways. Whether you receive in the hand or in the tongue, you can still sin. You know? So it's important to focus on the things that are right, the things that are true.
We should be taught that. We should be taught these things.
Yeah, well-
Just like when you receive communion in your hand, which I do. I don't walk away until I'm there in front of the person. I take it, say it, put it in my mouth, and after that, I'll walk away. I won't take it and just keep walking and put it in whenever you want.
Yeah. So it's a process, and we learn. And the church has gotten better at this. It used to be, for so many centuries, it's like the church doesn't teach anything. It was like herding the ignorant masses into salvation. And we still have a bit of that tradition, but more and more, like even tonight, right? We're learning. We're discussing things, and so we're learning more and more. But we got to get on because we're running long on here. But no, those are all important points, and I'm glad we brought them up. Yeah, please, you're welcome to.
That mass, because one of the women became a nun, so I was invited to the mass there. And first I sat on the wrong side.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got the hang of it. But the most beautiful thing was the way the women dress the mass.
Yes, it's beautiful,
We
like a
could
sea of
learn
silk.
a lot with these stretch pants and everything else that women come to church. And
Yeah.
so that was beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful, beautiful liturgy in so many
It's
ways.
a respect to dress properly. When you come into the house of God. Remember that? The hats.
Well, again, even here, make sure that we are careful, that you're right. The principle should be we come to Mass and we show respect and love in the way that we dress. Now, what happens when someone comes to Mass and they're dressed what seems to be really shabbily? We have to be careful. Now, if they had an emergency and this was the only way they were going to get to Mass, would you rather they miss Mass and dress, or that they come in their torn jeans because they were fixing somebody's car who broke down so they can get to Mass?
Oh, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's all right.
How about some of them that come in shorts in the summer?
Oh, I know.
The young
I know.
girls.
What he's saying is he's right. You have to be careful because you don't really know.
I know.
Yeah, I remember sitting one day behind a man, and he just seemed to be dressed really inappropriately. And I thought, oh, what's this guy doing? And I watched him, take and put $1 in the basket. And I began to realize just by watching him and seeing him as he turned around, this man was very, very poor. And he was probably there and all he had, still giving his $1. A lot more than whatever I gave in terms of a percentage. So just be careful. You're right. This is why I say let's focus on the things. Let's focus on the education for ourselves. Let's make sure we love and we're respectful. But let's be very careful. The girls who dress in the shorts and inappropriately, yeah, they shouldn't be. But has anyone taught them? Now, if they have and they've ignored it, that's a problem. But if no one has, and this is what they think is normal, we've got a job of education to do rather than a job of judgment to do.
Well, they figure that, at least they're coming to church. That would be the attitude. They're coming to church, they're coming to Mass.
And in a sense, we can say, yes, that's good because now we have the chance to educate them. But again, it's a matter of perspective. Am I thinking of what is God going to accept from me because I'm doing him a favor? Or is it our ignorance that needs to be dispelled? I think when we stand before God and we see all things, we might have a few things we'll be a little embarrassed about too.
That's for sure.
That's why there's confession.
Yeah. Why I say everyone in heaven has short necks and flat heads? Because God shows them what they did and they go. And he says, why'd you do that? And they go. Right? But there are so many ways, that the Blessed Sacrament is sinned against and needs reparation, right? We leave him alone. Never come. Ignore him. So many different ways in which we don't accept his presence. And so we ask for reparation against the sins against the Blessed Sacrament. So there's Thursday. Then we have Friday. Friday, he says, is the day of my passion. With all the love of your heart, immerse yourself in my sorrowful passion. When you arise in the morning, recall what was waiting for me the entire day after the terrible torments of that night. Now, I do keep that in mind. I think, at every moment Jesus had the chance to say, I'm out of here. This is crazy. He knew all day long, with every accusation, with every mockery, with every time they spit on him, every time they beat him, every splash of the scourge, every struggling breath, he could have just said, enough. I'm coming home, Father. And he didn't. Recall what was awaiting me the entire day after the terrible torments of that night. While at work, contemplate the way of the cross and consider that I did not have a moment of rest. Totally exhausted, I was forced to climb the Mount of Calvary. There is much to contemplate. I went to the limit, and I tell you, you cannot go to excess in doing something for me. From noon until 3 p.m., adore my sacred wounds. Hopefully you can keep fasting until the time my sacred body was taken down from the cross. And I should mention, for those of you who have the redacted version of the diary, there's actually a mistake here that the translators need to correct, where that's not an abridgment, it's actually a summary. And so they got it a bit wrong. They say in there, hopefully you can keep fasting until 3 o'clock, the hour my body was taken down. His body wasn't taken down at 3 o'clock. They messed it up. So it really was taken down closer to 6, which is the time we typically end fasting on Monday, Thursday, and Friday. Right, so from noon until 3, adore my sacred wounds. Hopefully you can keep fasting until the time my sacred body was taken down from the cross, around 6. And if you accept to sacrifice yourself, my daughter, you will receive an even greater abundance of graces. Okay, then we have Saturday. Right, if you think of it, now it's not 6 like we look at a watch. It wasn't society like that. But if you think of it, he died at 3. Right, that was the important thing. He died at 3 o'clock. That's the hour of great mercy. And then remember that they didn't want the body hanging on the cross because it would violate the holy day, it would profane the holy day. And so they want the bodies taken down, and Pilate sends to find out if they're already dead. Right, and so they break the legs. They want to make sure. So there's all this time that has to take place. From the time that Jesus dies, to the time they request the body, to the time Pilate says, go make sure he's dead, to the time they get permission, to the time they finally take him down and put him in the grave. So hours pass. So, that's why the time. All right. So now I have Saturday is the day of our mother. On this day, venerate our mother in a special way with a very particular tenderness. As you are well aware, she is the mother of all graces. Wish that she be venerated on earth as she is venerated in heaven by the multitude of angels and saints. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Right, you think of the respect that Mary has in heaven. Think of the respect she has on earth. A little bit of a difference there. How wonderful if all the earth would look at her as the angels and the saints do. And you know what would happen when they look at her as the angels and the saints do? They look at her son the way the angels and the saints do. Also, he says, seek for agonizing priests. Agony is the time of death. We tend to use it in other ways, but agony is specifically the time when one is dying. One goes through agony. Seek for agonizing priests who are dying, the grace of a holy death. Offer every moment of the day for that purpose. What a great reward you will receive. In heaven, priestly souls will intercede for you, and the Most Holy Virgin will be waiting for your soul at the hour of your death. Offer the night vigil for this intention also. Okay, so there's Saturday. And then Sunday, for this day, the lovable Redeemer gives no specific directions. In the next presentation we have, we'll see that on Sunday, Mary does ask for something on Sunday. And we'll cover that next time. Okay, so those are our days, right? So we have Monday, we have for souls, for Tuesday, for our families, offering each one by name. On Wednesday, for vocations to the priesthood. On Thursday, reparation for the sins against the Blessed Sacrament. Friday, to remember the suffering of Jesus and his passion. And Saturday, the day of our mother. Right, so, and you'll notice them, as I mentioned, I adapted this from the official document, and I actually took off a prayer that was in here to make room for the daily intentions. So as you're praying the rosary, I know sometimes we pray the rosary in a cenacle, it wouldn't include the intention for the day. So that's why I wanted to make sure that on this prayer sheet, you've got the intention for each day. All right, so again, what are our next steps? As we unpack this devotion step by step, cenacle by cenacle, as we learn about it, it's pretty straightforward. Right? So now we want to start ordering our prayers, our thoughts, and our fasts around the schedule, around these intentions that Jesus gave us. So we want to continue fasting, the Mondays, the Thursday, the Friday fast, on bread and water till 6, and then after that anything as we can, within our limitations as we spoke last week. Continue living the unity prayer, not just praying it, but living it, being united with Jesus' intentions for each day. Right? Again, not Jesus, come and walk with me, but Jesus, let me walk with you. What is your intention for today? So we live the unity prayer by keeping these intentions. Continue the flame of love, Hail Mary, and the rosary, so we blind Satan. The fivefold sign of the cross, joining our minds to Jesus' sufferings, and offering our work, our sacrifices, our fasts, our masses, and adoration for the blinding of Satan and the salvation of souls. So there are our marching orders so far. We'll keep adding to the list, but that's what we've got. All right, so those are the daily intentions. Thoughts, questions, discussion. All right. Well, with that then, let me shut this down.